Guys, this is an incredible video to me. You're looking at the magnetopause from last year, just a random date because it was a normal image. You can see the Earth in the center. That small white circle indicates our planet. The white section indicates the sun facing our daylight side. All of the energy that you see as these models go forward is energy coming from the sun, from the right moving to the left. That's what this indicates. The white dotted line indicates 4 satellites that read this information, called the 15, GOS 1413, and the South Korean COMS satellite. That's called the satellite band. The white band to the far right with the circle, outlined in red and yellow is the outer edges of the shields of the Earth, our magnetopause, part of the magnetoshield, part of the magnetic lines of force that surround our planet. Look, starting yesterday, collapsed almost into the satellite band, and it gets worse. Look, we moved in today. Notice the timestamp. This thing is pushing down into the satellite band, which is 22,400 miles. That when this happens without a major solar flare, even though we're having a small geomagnetic storm, which we have a lot of those, this indicates something different. You're going to see it here as we change and go to 3 different models of the same timestamp. Something was going on. I knew it. The timing is amazing because I showed you of this very rare event in a video last night talking about Jupiter being the Nibiru system. I believe in my heart. Look at this for today. 015 at 1:52 UTC time. Something starts pushing from the backside. You don't see this. It's not through. Let's play it through. It completely changes the reversal of the solar stream from the sun. Look at that wave of energy, guys. Recorded on 3 different models. I'm sure it's on the Japanese models that we don't have access to anymore. Look at this, completely all the way back to our planet. But suddenly for 3 days, the solar stream reversed. In other words, we were getting proton bombardment on these satellites from behind the planet, strong enough to overcome the proton bombardment coming from the sun. Let's look at this. The sun and the solar wind provide the primary influence on the Earth's geomagnetic field. That's our shields. The solar wind consists of charged particles from the sun, which varies with the degree of solar activity. This solar activity is best exemplified by sunspots. Guys, remember we're going into a solar minimum now, and results in a virtual sheet of current flowing from the sun, in turn producing a very complex magnetic field. Now remember, our sunspot cycle is about 11 point so many years on the average. That's also the orbit of Jupiter around our planet. Planetary magnetic fields such as Jupiter and Saturn are considerably less documented but appear to be rotation-based. Because of the solar wind, the planet's magnetic fields in outer space take on the configuration of a tear-shaped magnetosphere. The same way with the Earth, guys, we see it being blown back. In the case of the Earth, the strange orientation of the magnetic poles twist this tear shape almost 30 degrees and thus imposes additional complexity to the problem. In the case of Jupiter, its magnetosphere extends out as far as the orbit of Saturn, with material being forcibly disconnected from Jupiter and flung down the tail all the way back to Saturn. Again, Jupiter is just on the other side, guys, of the asteroid belt. Earth, Mars, asteroid belt, Jupiter. This electromagnetic movement of charged particles from Jupiter might be termed the Jupiter wind. In each case, the magnetospheres of the planets act as a shield against the effects of the solar wind, but a shield which may not be entirely effective. In the case of the Earth, the geomagnetic pressure very nearly balances the dynamic pressure of the solar wind. This equalized pressure surface layers termed our magnetopause and acts as a shield for 99% of the solar wind. Look at Jupiter. It has the same magnetopause. And it's a teardrop formation most of the time, being blown back towards Saturn. But what they're talking about here is when
The periods that astrologers call the Sun-Jupiter oppositions, the Earth is situated directly between the Sun and Jupiter. Now remember, and they go through this quite well, strictly speaking, because of the differences in the inclination of the orbits of the two planets, such oppositions refer only to the longitudinal dimension. In other words, if you look at it from above, you can see that there's the Sun, the Earth, and Jupiter. But if you look at it from the side, they're not lined up because the Earth can be below Jupiter or vice versa. But rarely they all come into alignment at the same time within one arc minute. It says all cases the Earth is not effectively in a line with the Sun and Jupiter. Instead, the Earth is either considerably below or above the line connecting the Sun and Jupiter. A near perfect alignment of the Sun, Earth, and Jupiter, when the Earth would quite literally, and here's the key, cast an electromagnetic shadow on Jupiter's magnetosphere. This occurs rarely. Such a near perfect alignment occurs only when the Earth passes between the Sun and Jupiter, both in longitude, and simultaneously the difference in latitude between the Earth and Jupiter is less than 1 minute of arc. The key factor is that in those cases, when such a near-perfect alignment does occur, the effects may be significant. Guys, and that's what we saw was the Jupiter wind back in October. The concept being suggested here is that during a near-perfect alignment of the Sun, the Earth, and Jupiter, the longitudes of Earth and Jupiter exact, and the differences again, latitude less than 1 arc minute, the Jupiter wind takes effect. The giant planet's magnetosphere responds to the temporary cessation of the dynamic pressure of the solar wind caused by the Earth's electromagnetic shadow falling on Jupiter's magnetosphere. When that happens, the Earth is technically blocking that solar wind that's stripping Jupiter back towards Saturn, and Jupiter's energy is released towards our planet. It says the so-called Jupiter wind consists of charged particles with more energetic, negatively charged electrons leading the way and leaving the more massive, positively charged protons far behind. The charged particles, no longer constrained by the pressure of the solar wind, are essentially flung out into space in the direction of the Earth. And thus our magnetopause reversals. Says the leading edge of the Jupiter wind would effectively sweep across the Earth just as the Earth's shadow swept across the face of Jupiter, causing a negatively charged surge which, when in combination with the solar wind, would cause a massive electromagnetic force against the Earth's geomagnetic field. In many respects, the Jupiter wind would provide the trigger and the reversing mechanism, while the solar wind provides the power. Think about that, guys. That's what we're seeing. Now we're dealing with magnets. If you break it down, and magnets have a positive charge side and a negative charge side. And if you get two magnets, guys, and many of you have done this, and you put the two positive sides together, they push away from each other. But if you flip it around and you put the negative side to the positive, it pulls together. By simply understanding that, and understanding that the magnetic poles of the Earth can shift, of the Sun can shift, and of Jupiter, but in God's perfect balance, they keep each other with opposite polarities. In other words, in a balance. What happens if they change polarities at the same time in opposite direction, and suddenly the massive gravity brings Jupiter and Saturn and its moons closer into the inner solar system? And that's as basic as I can explain what would happen and what would cause this. And when you deal with the events we're talking about, you can have magnetic pole reversals, not physical, but magnetic poles. Now, Batlin and Laughlin did models going way back in time, and they showed where Jupiter and Saturn has come inward into the inner solar system, and it sent swarms of 100-kilometer wide planetary building blocks cascading into the inner solar system. Many think that there was a planet between Mars and Jupiter that is now had got crushed during that event and is part of the asteroid belt. It says the giant planet's gravity would also sling these building blocks in the inner planets themselves into overlapping elliptical orbits, creating an interplanetary demolition derby of whirling, colliding, fragmenting worlds. It's called the Destroyer. It's called Nibiru, guys. People keep looking in deep space, watching things. They start watching camera lens flares, seeing a second sun. Guys, if you can see it on the camera of a cell phone, you could see it with your eyes. That's not what's happening. Everyone's looking so far away when it's right under us.